In the summer of 1284, in a prosperous little town in Lower Saxony, something happened that no one has ever been able to explain. On a single day, 130 children walked out of the town of Hamelin and were never seen again. This is not a fairy tale, or at least it did not begin as one. The people of Hamelin wrote it down. They carved the date into their buildings, and on one street in that town, to this very day, music is forbidden. This is the true story behind the Pied Piper of Hamelin. Hamelin sits on the banks of the river Weser in the north of Germany. In the 13th century, it was a comfortable place, a market town of millers and merchants, timber houses leaning over narrow streets and church bells ringing out over red rooftops. It was the kind of ordinary, thriving town where nothing was ever supposed to happen. And then, according to the story that grew up later, it was overrun. The rats came in their thousands, or so the tale would eventually claim. They poured through the granaries and the cellars, gnawed the grain, fouled the wells, and swarmed through the streets in a grey and moving tide. The townsfolk set traps and released the cats and beat the rats with brooms, and still the rats multiplied. The town was desperate, and desperate towns will listen to anyone who promises a way out. He arrived, the story says, dressed in a coat of many colours, a patchwork of red and yellow that gave him his name, the Pied Piper. He carried a pipe of silver, and he made the town a simple offer. For a sum of gold, he would rid them of every last rat. The desperate councillors agreed at once and promised him a rich reward. The stranger smiled and raised the pipe to his lips. He began to play, and as the strange, sweet music drifted through the streets, the rats came. They came from the cellars and the barns and the drains, tumbling over one another to follow the sound. The piper walked, still playing, down through the town to the edge of the Weser, and the rats followed in a living river of their own. He stepped aside, and one by one they poured into the water and were drowned. By nightfall, not a single rat remained in Hamelin. The town rejoiced. But when the piper returned to claim his gold, the councillors had a sudden change of heart. The rats were gone after all and could hardly be brought back. Why pay a fortune to a wandering stranger for a single morning's work? They offered him a fraction of the sum and told him to be grateful. The piper said very little. He left the town, they thought, for good. They were wrong. He returned on the 26th of June in the year 1284, a bright summer's day, when the grown folk were gathered at church. Once more he raised his pipe, but this time the tune was different, and this time it was not the rats who heard it. From every house in Hamelin the children came, boys and girls, laughing and dancing. They streamed into the streets and fell in behind the stranger in his coat of many colours. And he led them, playing all the while, out of the town and away toward the hills. 130 children followed the piper out of Hamelin that day. They were led to a hillside beyond the town, and there, the story says, the hill opened and the children walked into the dark, and the hill closed behind them. Not one was ever seen again. Only 2 or 3 were left behind, a lame child who could not keep pace, and a blind child who could not find the way, and it was from them that the town learned how their children had gone, dancing and never once looking back. Here is where the legend turns strange, because Hamelin remembered this as history, not as a tale. The oldest account was a stained glass window in the town church, made around the year 1300, showing the piper and the children. It is lost now, but it was described by those who saw it. The town chronicles record the date. And there is a street in Hamelin called the Bungelosenstrasse, the street without drums, said to be the last place the children were seen, where to this day no music may be played and no dancing allowed. Strangest of all, in the earliest versions of the story, there are no rats at all. The rats were added centuries later, The original tale was only ever about the children and their vanishing. So what really happened at Hamelin? For centuries, people have tried to explain it. Some blamed a plague, a sickness that carried off the young, remembered afterward as a piper leading them away, though the date is too early for the Black Death. Some pointed to the dancing manias that gripped medieval Europe, when whole crowds would dance until they dropped. But the explanation many historians now favour is quieter and sadder. In the 13th century, agents known as locators travelled the crowded towns of Germany, recruiting young people to settle the empty lands far to the east. A recruiter in bright clothing, a piper of a kind, may have led the young men and women of Hamelin away to build new lives in distant Moravia or Pomerania, never to return. And in the villages of the east, centuries later, historians found clusters of family names from Hamelin, as though the children had simply grown up somewhere else. Whatever the truth, the people of Hamelin never forgot. They kept the date, they kept the street, and they kept the silence. A story that may have begun with a real and terrible loss became in time the most famous piece of folklore in all the world. 130 children, one summer's day, and a door in a hillside that never opened again.